With the long-awaited release of version 2.6 and one of the most insane DPS characters yet, there will undoubtedly still be a lot of hype for the second phase, specifically due to the release of Iuno, since not only does she synergize extremely well with Augusta, but can work alongside quite a few other characters due to the incredible utility within her kit. So with the fact we do have access to Iuno's full kit and details on a signature weapon before she does release, I'll be going ahead and breaking down her kit to display the value she holds. Alongside team synergies you may want to consider, viable echo builds to prepare, weapons that can be utilized, then I'll be wrapping it up with Iuno's overall value, and when we do reach the second phase of version 2.6, if she is a character you should consider for your account. Once again, I'll be giving away a bunch of codes that do provide astrites to those that do comment down their favorite WuWa character. But do bear in mind, I'll most likely be picking those that are subscribed, and I would really appreciate it if you can keep an eye out for my response to your comments. Also, as usual, do drop a like if you are interested in more WutheringWaves content and if you enjoyed the video. Now, as our newest Aero Gauntlet Resonator, Iuno essentially is a sub DPS and support in one, since not only is she able to deal considerable damage, but will also provide great support through heals and amplifying the damage of her allies. That alongside an easy playstyle, since she does generate multiple shields and clean looking animations, Iuno is quite stacked and will certainly provide great value within various compositions. Jumping into the actual mechanics, Iuno's forte allows her to enter two different states known as the Lunar Cycle Half Moon state and Lunar Cycle New Moon state. The Half Moon state on one hand will focus on accumulating stacks of sentience for the forte gauge, whilst the New Moon state will consume stacks of sentience to deal considerable damage. Now the Half Moon state in specific would be considered as the default state that Iuno enters when activating Lunar Cycle, which can be activated through either the Enhanced Resonance Skill Closing Refrain or the Resonance Liberation. With activating the Enhanced Resonance Skill, when not in the Lunar Cycle state, there will be a short duration of 5 seconds to activate it after triggering the Standard Resonance Skill or the Intro Skill, or when completing the full basic attack string. Following on from that and entering the Half Moon state, Iuno can hold up to a max of 100 stacks of sentience, and aside from the basic attacks, dodge counters and mid-air attacks providing stacks on hit, the Intro skill will restore 40 points, the Resonance Liberation will restore 60 points, and casting Resonance Skill Closing Refrain or Unfinished Refrain will each provide 25 points. Once you have accumulated enough stacks of sentience, activating the heavy attack Flux Moonbow will allow Iuno to switch from the Half Moon state to the New Moon state and deal damage considered as Resonance Liberation damage. Though alongside that, Iuno can switch back whenever she wants with activating heavy attack Flux Moonring, which will also deal damage considered as Liberation damage and would allow for some flexibility to switch between both Lunar Cycle states. Now within the New Moon state, otherwise known as the DPS state, Iuno's Moonbow basic attacks, Moonbow dodge counter and Resonance Skill Arc Beyond the Edge will each consume sentience to deal damage considered as Liberation damage. Though alongside dealing considerable damage, each attack will increase the damage multiplier of those specific attacks, restores additional concerto energy and heals all allies. So there is clearly a ton of value behind the New Moon state, and especially with the fact all of this will be dealt once Iuno is at a distance from enemies, which allows it to be a bit easier to complete her rotation without any interruptions. In addition to that, the Resonance Skill Arc Beyond the Edge in specific will be great not only for the damage it deals, but since it does have 2 separate charges, and with each charge allowing Iuno to immediately recover from being knocked back from an attack. So alongside dealing solid damage, you could perhaps consider this as Iuno's personal auto dodge ability, but of course with being available only during the New Moon state and when activating the Resonance skill. Although the inherent skill alone should allow it to be easy enough to complete her rotation, since whenever Iuno casts pretty much any ability, she will gain a shield scaling of her attack to nullify damage for 15 seconds. However, that shield will only be for Iuno, since unfortunately it won't actually pass onto the incoming resonator. But I guess the healing she does provide will be good enough, and especially if she is alongside a dedicated support. Now again, with the fact Iuno's New Moon state does provide additional concerto energy, that will be even more useful than usual, since not only does it allow Iuno's rotation to be extremely quick, it would allow the heavy attack Absolute Fullness to be available, which can only be activated when reaching max Concerto energy. Upon activation, the ability will provide healing to allies and deal damage considered as Resonant Liberation damage. But more importantly would be that the Full Moon Domain is activated for 30 seconds. Similar to the Shorekeeper Stellar Realm, the Full Moon Domain will heal resonators inside of it, but would also restore stamina, which is something we haven't really seen before and would allow resonators to sprint further, deal more heavy attacks, and in Iuno's case, she would be a bit more comfortable traversing since she does consume stamina when moving around in mid-air. On top of that, resonators that gain a shield within the domain will receive 1 stack of the Blessing of the One Light, which is a 4% damage amplification for 10 seconds and can stack up to a max of 10 times, with each stack resetting the duration. So immediately from that we can tell Iuno is going to be insane for Augusta, since she can provide herself with shields and enough of them to grant access to the full 40% damage amplification. Although there would be some other characters that can benefit from the buff, and even Iuno herself, especially since the inherent skill will provide 5 stacks immediately when activating the intro skill or liberation. However, when considering the outro skill, it quite literally doubles down on the fact Iuno is going to be amazing for Augusta, since alongside dealing aero damage, Iuno will provide a massive 50% heavy attack damage amplification for the resonators switching in. Of course, this would allow for other resonators to also deal great damage, but paired with Augusta's ability to maximize the damage amplification without much difficulty, it is quite clear to see how Iuno once again is going to be incredible for Augusta. Now, the cherry on top of Iuno's kit would be the Resonant Liberation, which does have a nice animation as standard, and from the looks of the base damage multiplier, it should be capable of dealing a solid burst of damage alongside providing a stack of sentience for the Forte gauge. So with everything considered, Iuno really does have a stacked kit capable of providing great utility and dealing great damage, alongside an easy playstyle, whilst most of her abilities showcasing great animations, ultimately allowing Iuno to be one hell of a character overall. Moving on to team compositions to consider alongside Iuno's versatility. As I've mentioned, it's pretty obvious that Iuno will synergize with Augusta the most and will in fact be her best in slot sub DPS, considering of course the support she provides, but also since she will deal fantastic damage via multiple abilities that would influence the team's overall DPS. So then, alongside those two, it would likely be best to utilize either the Shorekeeper or Verena, since both characters are currently the best universal supports in their game that would allow for both Augusta and Iuno to deal more damage. Though of course the Shorekeeper being the premium option means that she would be the very best choice, especially since she does provide a bonus towards crit rate and crit damage alongside a damage amplification to all allies. So that with the incredible healing she provides alongside the healing Iuno provides and the shields both Augusta and Iuno generate, it does make this composition in specific arguably the safest team to utilize, and at the same time would be capable of dealing insane damage. Now, alongside being the best in slot sub DPS for Augusta, Iuno does in fact debut as the new best in slot sub DPS for Jiyan, since as of now the current best sub DPS is Mortiphy, which is able to amplify heavy attack damage through his outro skill by 38%. So then, with Iuno amplifying heavy attack damage by 50%, alongside dealing much greater damage, providing additional heals and a damage amplification when gaining a shield, it does mean Iuno will be a much better sub DPS overall that enables Jiyan to deal more damage and contributes much more to the team. Alternatively, Iuno's massive heavy attack damage amplification will also benefit characters such as Zani and Phoebe, since both characters do specialize in dealing lots of heavy attack damage with their abilities. Though unlike Augusta and Jiyan, Iuno wouldn't exactly be the best choice for Zani since she does prefer to be alongside someone that inflicts stacks of Spectra Frazzle, but she can definitely definitely be a great alternative if you don't have either Phoebe or Ciaccona. Now Phoebe on the other hand as a main DPS would synergize extremely well with Iuno and might just utilize her as her new best in slot sub DPS. That is, if you are intending to maximize the amount of damage Phoebe does deal. Now aside from the sub DPS position, it's worth mentioning with the right build you likely would be able to use Iuno as a main DPS and would synergize alongside sub DPS options such as Ciaccona, Jiyan and Yinlin, since each of them will either amplify Resonance Liberation damage or arrow damage via their outro skill. Although I wouldn't bank on Iuno being insane as a main DPS and would suggest to stick with utilizing her as a sub DPS, unless of course you do invest into some of her sequence nodes which do provide a significant damage boost. Lastly, due to the fact she simply is capable of healing through multiple abilities, it does mean Iuno could be utilized as a dedicated support in certain compositions, such as when alongside Phoebe and Zani. Though with that said, a support Iuno will be a bit more niche, and so again you may just want to stick with using her as a sub DPS. All in all, Iuno will have solid versatility and would synergize with quite a few heavy attack damage dealers, whilst there being potential to also be utilized as a main DPS, alongside having great long-term value for DPS characters that do specialize in dealing heavy attack damage and for shielders that can utilize the damage amplification Iuno provides. Though above everything and as of now, if you are looking to get the most out of Iuno's kit whilst intending to maximize the damage Augusta deals, then Iuno will certainly be a character to consider for your account. Now regarding the weapons that can be utilized, and as usual, the signature weapon will obviously provide the most value since it will allow Iuno to deal much more damage than when using any other weapon, especially since they do possess the highest crit rate bonus in comparison to other gauntlets, but also since it increases liberation damage by 20%, and similar to Augusta's signature weapon, it will allow Iuno's liberation damage to straight up ignore 36% defense on enemies, which goes without saying will lead to an immense amount of damage being dealt via the multiple abilities able to deal liberation damage. So if you are intending to utilize Iuno long term, the signature weapon would of course be a great addition to your account. However, since Iuno isn't going to be the main source of damage for her best compositions, it means it wouldn't be a must and could get away with using multiple alternatives, especially the Verity's Handle, which has a crit rate main stat, provides a 12% attribute damage bonus and a massive 48% liberation damage bonus. Of course, there is the gimmick with the liberation damage bonus only lasting for 8 seconds but can be extended upon activating multiple resonant skills, which Iuno is capable of, and so then should be able to utilize the passive and extend the liberation damage bonus. So ultimately, if you do at least have the Verity's Handle, it means you can skip the signature and still allow Iuno to deal considerable damage. Now alongside that, there would be a few other 5-star options such as the Blazing Justice and Abyss Surges, which would be viable alternatives, mostly due to the main stats and their passives providing some value, but of course wouldn't be as great as the signature or the Verity's Handle. Then as for the 4-star options, there would be the Battle Pass weapons as your last resort, though the most recent Battle Pass gauntlets may perhaps be even better than the Abyss Surges and Blazing Justice since they are tailor-made for Iuno. So there will be a handful of weapon choices to go with that are viable to utilize, with the signature weapon of course being the best option and the Verity's Handle being the best alternative. However, once again, since Iuno isn't the main source of damage in her best compositions, unless you do want to maximize her damage or utilize her as a main DPS, I wouldn't worry too much about equipping the best weapons. As for the Echo builds, there will be a few different variations you can use depending on what your priorities would be, since if you are intending to maximize Iuno's damage, then the new Crown of Valor set alongside either the Gust of Vulcan or Sierra Gale or Windward Pilgrimage set will be the best build, considering the Crown of Valor 3-piece set will provide a total attack bonus of 30% and a crit damage bonus of 20% when generating enough shields, which is something Iuno would be capable of achieving quite easily due to the inherent skill. Also, with Augusta Vulcan or Sierra Gale or Windward Pilgrimage each providing a standard 10% arrow damage bonus via the 2-piece set, they would of course pair well with the Crown of Valor and allow Iuno to deal great damage. On the other hand, if you are intending to maximize the damage of the main DPS alongside Iuno, then of course the good old Moonlit Cloud set would be the 5-piece set to utilize, since it does provide an attack bonus of 22.5% to the next Resonator when activating the outro skill, alongside the Impermanent Terran itself providing an additional 12% damage bonus for the Resonator switching in. Lastly, it's worth mentioning the Rejuvenating Glow set would be viable to utilize since Iuno is capable of healing, which means the 5-piece bonus that provides the entire team with 15% additional attack can be activated quite easily. However, if you are already utilizing a dedicated support within the team that has the Rejuvenating Glow set equipped, then of course you would be better off with one of the aforementioned Echo builds. Now regarding the stats you would want to prioritize on the Echoes, the 4-cost will certainly want either crit rate or crit damage. The 3-cost Echoes will want arrow damage bonus, but one of them will be fine with attack percent, and then the 1-cost Echoes will most definitely want attack percent. As for the substats, crit rate and crit damage will as usual be at the top, following with attack percent since Iuno's healing and shield does scale off attack, then Resonance Liberation damage and some rolls of energy regen or flat attack. Overall, Iuno, like other sub-DPS and supports in one, will hold fantastic value, since you would be able to rely on the damage she deals and will massively benefit from the support she provides. Of course, alongside great looking animations and a very easy playstyle since she does generate multiple shields for herself with pretty much 100% uptime. To top it off, she does have great synergy with meta damage dealers and holds great long-term value, since she will be great alongside new heavy attack damage dealers and characters that generate multiple shields. So there are quite a few reasons to why you may want to consider Iuno for your account. But as mentioned, if you are looking to gain the most out of her kit and more specifically the damage amplification she provides, Augusta will then be the best character to synergize with Iuno, and so means if you have picked up or still are trying to pick up Augusta, then Iuno will be a fantastic sub DPS to summon for in order to also enable Augusta to perform at her best. However, if you are skipping Augusta and may not have any other top tier heavy attack damage dealers on your account, then she wouldn't be as necessary since her outro isn't able to buff any other damage type aside from heavy attack damage. Although there will be more characters that release later on that can synergize with Iuno, alongside the fact that since she does heal and deal considerable damage, it does allow her to work within various compositions and outside of the sub DPS position, which ultimately allows her to still be a great addition to your account if you really want her, and especially since she would only gain more value over time. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe for more WutheringWaves content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also, drop a comment down below on your thoughts on Iuno and whether or not you will be picking her up. And yeah, hope to catch you guys later.